All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Mainly Hoops podcast, where we're diving into a nice game preview, BYU versus Villanova, tomorrow night in Las Vegas. If you are enjoying the content, please make sure to like and subscribe. We appreciate all the support. But we're going to kick things off here with Cody. Cody, what are your initial thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, just the back half of the – what do they call in this tournament? I don't even remember. But
the
just
Hall of
the
Fame series.
After Florida. We'll just call it the game after Florida and Arizona. But it's a matchup that I think a lot of people think looks like a blowout on the onset. Like, a lot of people really like this BYU team. A lot of people are very down on this Villanova team, and I think I'm kind of in on the latter. Like, I'm not, and I wouldn't say I'm in love with this Villanova team. They have some injuries to monitor as well. Like, obviously Devin Askew's out for a little while. You can call that addition by subtraction, really. You have Zion Stanford, who is potentially out. He had a sprained ankle, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I'm not sure if he's going to go. This is a team that has a good amount of depth, though, particularly on the wings, and that's typical of a Kevin Willard team. He's obviously going to lean on his freshman and Acaden Lewis, but another guy he's been playing quite a bit is a guy that he brought with him from Maryland, and that's Malachi Palmer. He played quite a bit in the exhibition games, and liked what I saw. He wasn't hyper efficient, but ultimately I think he's going to be a nice second helper on the ball. And this is also a Villanova team that has some off-ball shooting to potentially give this BYU defense some problems. I know this BYU defense is much improved. They're much improved athletically. Like, they're probably going to be able to do some different things on this end, but I think it's something to monitor with a defense that was trying to play a little more compact last year and deny the rim. I think there's a lot of really good catch and shoot options with this Villanova team and in Tyler Perkins and Hodge and some of those other pieces down the board that can be pretty valuable in a game like this. But for BYU, obviously the offense has a ton of star power led by AJ Dybantsa and Richie Saunders, and I think they can sort of expose this Villanova rim protection at the very least. Like, I'm not all that high on Duke Brennan at the Power 5 level to protect the rim at like a Kevin Willard defense level. Like, Kevin Willard defenses are typically very good, and they're typically led by their rim protection backbone. I know that he obviously has pretty good wing defenders as well. Like, it's just very good personnel across the board, but this is it's a pretty glaring weakness for me. And I think a guy like Dybantsa can take his man off the bounce in isolation or any other play type and take his guy to the rim. I was pretty impressed with his rim scoring ability throughout those exhibition games. So I think that's an area that they could exploit this Villanova defense, potentially break them down, and eventually get to their catch and shoot options of, like, Richie Saunders obviously is the headliner, shot at 43% last year. I'm not sure if Dawson Baker is going to be playing. I haven't seen him play in any of the exhibitions yet. But and then another guy like Kennard Davis, who's going to play a big role. They expect Boscovich, I think, to shoot it a little bit better than he did last year. He'll play a pretty decent role there. And then Rob Wright, who shot at 35% from 3 last year. So if BYU's offense is humming from the get-go, I think they can potentially break down this Villanova defense and get the shots that they want.
Marcus, what are your initial thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, I would agree here. I think I do think there's some turnover, right, with this BYU roster. We've got Rob Wright coming in, some different shooters now on the side, coming off the bench. Dawson Baker, like Cody said, hasn't been playing. So I do think there is some potential for this game to be closer than people think. I'm just not, as anyone has seen in any of our off-season episodes, like, I'm not a Villanova fan. Don't like this roster, really. The rim protection, as Cody said, the front court in general is just not strong. Like Duke Brennan up front, coming over, had a 23% defensive rebound rate last year, but now he's going to be, Keba Keita is going to be, that guy, as we've talked about, he's like chiseled. He's going to be all over the offensive glass against him. I think that he could really give him problems there. And I think, as we've also talked about all offseason. I think Rob Wright's a real key here. I think it's something I'm really intrigued to watch, to see how he kind of manages this BYU offense, because as we saw last year, like Kevin Young does a great job of getting his teams to play high level offensive basketball and get them great shots, most possessions. And so, if Rob Wright can really be the technician of that right from the get-go, like you said, I think this offense could really have a field day against this Villanova defense, getting to the rim, getting to their spots. Dybantsa, obviously, he loves to be in that mid-range to rim area. So I think they could really get the shots that they want, like you said. And I think there's some potential to get on the offensive glass here against Villanova as well. As for the other side, BYU's defense is certainly improved. I do think that while Villanova does have some shooters, like they don't have an Eric Dixon, they don't have a go-to guy here. That kind of concerns me against a team like BYU that we figure is going to have a high octane offense. You're here on opening night. BYU has, in my opinion, a real chance to really have a field day against this Villanova defense. And then you get back to the other end, and if you're not making shots at a high clip, you don't really have a guy yet that, in my opinion, that can really go get you a bucket. There's no Eric Dixon to lean on here, at least not yet. You've got Acaden Lewis, who he's a highly touted freshman recruit, but how quickly can he be that guy? To me, I don't think it's going to be tomorrow night. So I just have concerns there with the Villanova team in this matchup. Obviously, like the spread's at 7.5 or so, something like that. So they figured BYU to be better than a slight favorite. To me, it, like Cody said, if BYU's offense can get humming early, if Kevin Young has these guys up to speed right away, I think BYU could win by not a runaway, but somewhere in that like low teens. I'm picking BYU to win. I just don't really like this Villanova roster all that much.
Yeah, to stop that low teens margin of victory, Cody, what are the keys to the game Villanova has to do to limit that, or ultimately maybe win the game?
Yeah, they need to space out this BYU defense. I think that's the number one. I think the offense actually sets up pretty well against this team. I know they don't have like a certain go-to option, but I do think Acaden Lewis is a little more ready than your typical 4-star freshman. He was ranked like 35th by 247. I think he's definitely going to be ready to go. He's going to be ready to initiate some of this offense, and they can all sort of play off of each other with their shooting ability. It's going to be him, Bryce Lindsay, and like Tyler Perkins, and obviously Malachi Palmer is going to play a role as well. And I like Hodge as like a floor spacing 4. And so if they can get these guys out in space, like I know BYU, their defense has improved. They have improved athleticism, but I still wouldn't call this team like a demon on the defensive end by any means. I view them as more of like a top 40 to 45 defense, as opposed to where they finished last year in like the mid 60s. So there's obviously improvements there, but I do think if they can space them out, and another thing is just if they can force Dybantsa into taking bad shots, because he has been a guy that he'll go rogue at times, really on both ends of the floor. Like when he gets the ball will sort of stick at times. Like if you're able to force him to making some bad decisions, like just mix up looks against him, I think would be the number one thing. And it's not like this Villanova defense doesn't have like they have versatile defenders at the very least. Like with all these wing options that they could throw at Dybantsa, I think there's a good chance you could either force him to making a bad decision as a shot maker or as a passer. You throw 2 at him once in a while, you switch up pick and roll coverages, and I think you could kind of bother him a little bit at times. And for a BYU team that has a little bit less off-ball shooting than they had a year ago, I think it could potentially frustrate them. So if they have an off night shooting from 3, like I wouldn't be shocked in the slightest if Villanova was able to keep this game very close, or maybe even, pull off the slight upset.
Marcus, what are we looking for out of BYU this opening night.
Yeah, I mean, I think for them, it's taking away through open catch and shoot opportunities, right? I think keeping the ball in front of them, so they don't have to over rotate and leave shooters wide open. I think that's, as Cody said, that's where Villanova can win this game. Is knocking down shots. So I just think they have to be solid on the defensive end. As cliche as that might sound, but just keep the ball in front. Don't gamble for stuff. Make them shoot tough ones. I think that's really what it's going to come down to, because there's not like an elite option on this offense. So it's just about containing the basketball, making them shoot contested threes and contested pull-ups, and keeping them off the offensive glass. And then on the other end, it's just getting into what we saw late in last season, right? We haven't even mentioned Richie Saunders yet, who was fantastic last year. Richie Saunders and Dybantsa, along with Rob Wright, and then Keita on the offensive glass. I think those four, how can they just kind of really get into what they want to do right away? Last year towards the end of the season, we saw just how easy of shots they were getting so quick into possessions, right? It was like quick hitter actions where they're getting wide open catch and shoot threes and wide open mid-range shots and wide open layups, so I think it's like how far along are they on this end? And will Dybantsa, who, as you said, likes to go rogue at times, does that kind of mess up the rhythm at times? Because he is a true, he's a top 5 recruit and consensus top 5 pick in the NBA draft next year. There's going to be times, I imagine, where he has those freshman moments where he goes away from what they're trying to do offensively and just kind of goes ISO, which I think Kevin Young is going to live with at times. But the more Villanova can force him to do that, the better. So I think staying out of that and just staying in what they're looking to do. Rob Wright kind of just orchestrating it all, getting downhill, getting guys shots, getting himself to the rim and the free throw line. I think, if they just stay true to that, stick to the Kevin Young plan, which I really believe in, they'll be fine in this game.
Any final thoughts before we wrap it up here?
I guess one thing I'll say about Saunders is do we really think he's a 43% shooter this year or in that area? Because the last 2 years, we saw him as a freshman 30%, sophomore year 36% on low volume. I just obviously he's getting put in better spots now with Kevin Young, and he's getting more open looks, and obviously the form is pure. Everything about it looks really great. But do we see regression with his shooting? Do we see him kind of regressing back to that 34% number if he's going to take a higher volume of threes? Because he did struggle a couple of years before the 43% year.
Marcus, what do you think?
Players are allowed to get better. I think
Right.
no worse than 39%. That's his shot is too
Might be a little
pure,
dip.
in my opinion.
We'll do a friendly wager that he goes under that number, under 39%.
Right.
I'll take that. I'm a little bit worried because players are allowed to get better, but players are also allowed to be fortunate with 3-point variance. So I do see him. I think he's going to be under. I have him under 39. I'll say he finishes at 37. 37.
It's just hard. When you sustain that for a 35 game sample size last year, that's where I see it, and so that's why I'm it's visually pleasing to watch. It's just so pure.
It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, no, I got nothing else.
All right, we'll remind everyone of that friendly wager we got going on at the end of the season. We'll keep an eye on it. But as always, we're going to wrap things up here. Thank you for listening to the Mainely Hoops podcast.